Margot Reynolds didn't expect to cry that morning. Not in the middle of a dentist's waiting room surrounded by chipped furniture, soft rock music, and the faint whir of a fish tank motor. But it happened. She had picked up a magazine from the side table, a glossy monthly focused on indie music culture, and flipped absently through the pages, searching for something to distract her from the ache in her molar. That's when she saw him. Page 42, lower right corner. A full-color photo of a young man sitting on the hood of an old Cadillac, guitar in his lap, smile uneven but magnetic. He wore a denim jacket ripped at the elbow, and there was a birthmark on the side of his face. A bold, flame-shaped mark that arced from his cheekbone across his right brow. It was that mark that broke her. Her breath caught mid-inhale. She blinked. Once, twice, and brought the magazine closer. She was seeing things. She had to be. But the longer she stared, the louder her heartbeat became. Not in her chest, but in her ears, her throat, her fingertips. She knew that face. The caption read, "Zay Monroe, Atlanta's newest soul folk prodigy, is writing his own legend." Margot didn't remember how long she sat frozen. The receptionist called her name twice before she responded. She slipped the magazine into her tote bag without thinking, mumbled an apology, and left the appointment without being seen. The pain in her tooth had vanished beneath a greater ache. She drove home with both hands shaking on the wheel, the magazine seat-belted into the passenger seat beside her. Margot lived alone in a modest house in the heart of Savannah, the kind with warped floorboards and faded wallpaper that had outlasted 3 generations. Outside, the garden was overgrown, the fence tilted like it had given up. But inside, everything was neat, controlled, static, the same way it had been for 20 years. She set the magazine on the kitchen table, careful not to crease the page. The sun filtered in through gauzy curtains, lighting up dust motes that swirled like snow. Margot stood for a long time, just staring. The face of the boy, the man, smiled up at her from the page. His eyes were a darker shade of green now, but still wide-set like hers. His mouth was David's, but the birthmark, God, the birthmark was exact. The same strange, jagged shape that had startled her when Elias was born. The doctor had called it a port wine stain. Margot had called it a signature, a mark God didn't make twice. Her knees gave out. She sat on the floor and wept. 20 years ago, in the spring of 2005, Elias Reynolds disappeared from a church daycare. Margot had been late picking him up, a Friday afternoon. She remembered the smell of wet asphalt and blooming azaleas. Her phone had died on the way, and traffic had snarled all down Whitaker Street. She was 13 minutes late. When she arrived, the front room was empty. No teachers, no children. Just a rickety rocking chair still moving slowly, creaking like a metronome out of sync. Elias's crib was empty. His blanket, yellow with ducks, was folded neatly at the foot of the mattress. Margot remembered calling his name, thinking maybe he was with the other toddlers in the back. She remembered the silence that followed, the long seconds before panic bloomed. The security footage showed a woman in her early 20s picking Elias up just after 2:30 p.m. She signed the logbook. As Claire McAdams, a name that meant nothing to Margot, she carried Elias like a mother would, held him with practiced ease. He didn't cry. She was never seen again. Neither was Elias. The police worked the case for months. Tips came and went. False leads, cruel pranks, hopeful sightings. Margot printed flyers until her fingers blistered. She stopped sleeping. She stopped eating. Her husband, David, blamed her at first, then blamed himself. The guilt drowned their marriage. They divorced quietly a year later, like two people watching the last ember die and realizing they had nothing left to warm themselves. Margot stayed in Savannah. She changed careers, leaving teaching behind to work as an archivist at the Savannah Historical Museum. Cataloging old documents soothed her. The past stayed where it belonged. Predictable, knowable, until now. The next morning, Margot spread the magazine out on the dining table again. She ran her finger over the photo. Zay Monroe. The article was short, just a 2-page spread. It mentioned he was a breakout artist from Atlanta with a raw, haunting voice and a soul shaped by stories he doesn't fully remember. He was 22. Elias would be 23 this month. She looked closer. The birthmark, the smile, the slightly crooked front tooth. Her hands began to tremble again. She opened the drawer beneath the table and pulled out the tin box, the one she hadn't touched in 6 years. Inside, time was preserved in fragments, a hospital bracelet labeled Reynolds, Elias. Male, 7 lbs 1. Ozzy's, a photo of him swaddled in yellow, eyes barely open, a lock of fine brown hair from his first trim. A church bulletin from the week he disappeared. A photocopy of the last daycare sign-out sheet. Margot laid the baby photo beside the magazine page. Same cheekbones, same left dimple, same flame-shaped birthmark. No room for coincidence. Not in a universe this cruel. She whispered his name aloud. Elias. It didn't feel like a wound anymore. It felt like a key. At work, Margot moved like a ghost through the museum's archives. She filed old city permits, answered emails, and pretended to focus while her mind looped the same question over and over. How do I approach someone who doesn't know who they are? By lunchtime, she couldn't bear the silence. She called someone she hadn't spoken to in years. Claudia Mercer, came the voice on the other end. Still sharp, still calm. It's Margot, she said, voice thin. I think I found him. The pause was long. Claudia had been the lead detective on Elias's case until her retirement 6 years ago. Where? Claudia asked finally. Margot swallowed. A magazine, Music Monthly, April issue, page 42. Another pause. I'm coming over. Claudia arrived within an hour. She wore jeans and a leather jacket, her gray hair pulled back in a tight braid. She still moved like a cop, scanning the street as she stepped out of the car. Inside, she studied the magazine page, then the baby photo. She didn't speak for several minutes. Finally, she said, "That's not a resemblance. That's a match." "You think so?" "I'd bet my pension," Margot exhaled. "But what do I do? I can't just walk up to him?" Claudia shook her head. "No, that could backfire. If he was raised by someone else, they may have changed his name, his history. He might not even know he's not who he thinks he is." Margot sat down hard. "So what now?" Claudia opened her notebook. "We find out where he lives, who raised him. If the woman who took him is still around, quietly, carefully, if there's even a shred of hope this is Elias, we do it right." Margot nodded, tears pricking her eyes. "Thank you." Claudia looked at her. "You sure you're ready for this?" "I've been ready for 20 years. Margot didn't sleep that night. The house felt too loud. The clock ticked too aggressively. The creak of the ceiling fan sounded like footsteps that never came. She sat in bed, the magazine open in her lap, the photo of Zay Monroe lit only by the soft yellow glow of her reading lamp. She stared at the birthmark like it might blink back. At 3:17 a.m., she opened her laptop and typed his name into the search. Zay Monroe musician Atlanta, enter. Dozens of results popped up. Local music blogs, a Spotify page, a short YouTube interview with a college podcast. He'd released an EP the previous fall. His voice was smooth, bluesy. It held something old inside it, something weighted with emotion he didn't yet know how to name. Margot clicked on the podcast. "So, Zay, your music feels deeply personal, like there's history in it. Where does that come from?" "Honestly, I'm not sure. I guess I've always felt like I had stories in me I couldn't explain. Some of the songs come out fully formed, like I already knew them somehow." Margot clutched the blanket tighter. "Were you close to your parents growing up?" "I was raised by my dad, just him. We moved around a lot, Florida, Mississippi, then ended up in Georgia. He's quiet, but he's the reason I started playing. There was always music in the house, no TV, just vinyl and silence. The host chuckled. That sounds poetic and kind of lonely. Zay laughed, soft and low. Yeah, well, that's how it was. Margot sat in the dark for a long time after. The interview ended. By morning, Claudia had found an address. He's living in the Cabbagetown district, she said over coffee at Margot's kitchen table, sharing a loft with his manager. The building's listed under a Walter Gaines. Is that his dad? Could be. Gaines used to be in the industry, worked in analog recording, small studios. Dropped off the grid about 15 years ago. No criminal record, but something about him feels off. Margot traced the rim of her mug. What do we do? Claudia leaned forward. I drive up there, poke around. Casual. I can't flash a badge anymore, but people still talk to me like I have one. Meanwhile, you stay here. Let me see what I find. I can't just sit here. You've waited 20 years. Give me 20 hours. That afternoon, Margot returned to the museum. She needed normalcy, or at least the illusion of it. She moved slowly through the rows of old city maps and Civil War correspondence, but her mind was elsewhere. At 3:12 p.m., her phone buzzed. Claudia. He was playing at a small venue last night. Open mic. I stayed in the back. He's good, Margot. Really good. The crowd loved him. Did you speak to him? No, not yet. But I did speak to someone else. Who? The girl who introduced him. Said she's known him since he was 17. Calls him Eli when no one's listening. Swears he told her once that it felt like a name he remembered from a dream. Margot nearly dropped the phone. Also, Claudia added, I got a look at the mark. It's identical. Margot sank into the nearest chair, breath gone. Claudia returned that evening, her expression unreadable. They've been living there for at least 5 years, she said. Zay's not a kid in danger. He's an adult, but he doesn't seem to know he was ever someone else. Then, how do we tell him? Margot whispered. Claudia hesitated. Carefully, and only after we're sure. I am sure. Claudia pulled a folded paper from her coat pocket. Then this might help. It was a photo, grainy, black and white. A printout from an old music studio's social page, archived from 2005. It showed a young man, maybe 35, standing beside a woman holding a bundled baby. Margot's heart stopped. That's her, she said. That's the woman who took Elias. Her name was Claire. Real name, Renee Holloway. She died in 2012. Auto accident in Louisiana. No one connected the dots. And the man? Walter Gaines. For the next 2 days, Margot couldn't bring herself to eat. She studied every video, every performance, every post Zay had made. Over the years, there weren't many. He wasn't a big social media person, but one Instagram post stood out. It was from 2 years ago. A throwback, he called it. Me and the Old Man, 2008. Still figuring out what kind of songs we wanted to write. In the photo, Zay was a child, about 6 years old. He was sitting on a wooden porch step, a guitar half his size in his lap. And behind him, sitting on a chair with a beer in hand, was Walter. Even with a beard and hat, Margot recognized the man from the old music studio photo. She zoomed in on Zay's face. Mark was clear even then. Claudia contacted a friend still active in law enforcement. They couldn't open a formal case without evidence of wrongdoing, and the statute of limitations on abduction was murky, especially if the boy had been raised without abuse. But Claudia had one idea left. DNA, she said. If we can get a sample from him, or even from you, we can confirm this. I'll do it, Margot said, whatever it takes. That weekend, Claudia returned to Atlanta under the guise of meeting a new artist she'd heard about. She attended another performance, this one in a record shop turned cafe. Zay played 4 songs. One of them was about the sea, another about a woman in yellow who vanished in a crowd. The lyrics stopped Claudia cold. She recorded it quietly on her phone and played it for Margot later. Margot listened in silence. When the song ended, she whispered, I used to wear a yellow raincoat every day when I picked him up from daycare. He used to call it my sunshine armor. Claudia's voice was thick. Margot, he remembers. Somewhere in there, he remembers. 2 nights later, Margot did something she hadn't done in years. She left Savannah. She booked a room in a modest hotel off Memorial Drive and waited. Claudia had arranged a private meet. Zay thought it was a photo opportunity for a local archive series, a showcase of musicians alongside retired cultural historians. Margot stood in the corner of the art gallery where the meeting was set. She wore her best coat, hair neatly tied, and hands hidden inside the sleeves to keep them from shaking. The door opened. He entered with his guitar slung over one shoulder and a curious expression on his face. "Hi," he said, extending a hand. "I'm Zay." Margot didn't take it. She just stared. His smile faltered. "Sorry, was that too formal?" "You look just like your baby photos," she whispered. Zay blinked. "I'm sorry?" Claudia stepped in quickly. "Zay, this is Margot Reynolds. She's the reason we invited you today." Zay's eyes flickered between them. "I'm not sure I understand." Margot took a breath. "You had another name," she said softly. "A long time ago, before anyone called you Zay." His brow creased. "What are you talking about?" "You were born Elias David Reynolds in Savannah, April 15th, 2002. Zay took a step back. "Okay, I don't know what this is." Claudia spoke gently. "We're not accusing you of anything, but we believe you may be someone else, someone who disappeared when he was just a baby." Zay laughed once, nervously. "That's insane." Margot reached into her bag. She pulled out a plastic envelope. Inside was a baby hospital bracelet and a photo. "Please," she said, voice trembling, "just look." Zay hesitated, then took it. He looked down. "The photo! The name!" He didn't speak. "The birthmark," Margot whispered. "It was the first thing I memorized. I used to trace it with my finger every night before bed." Zay shook his head slowly. "This is crazy." "My dad, he raised me." Claudia stepped in. "Walter Gaines. He's not listed on any legal adoption record. In fact, there are no papers tying you to him at all." Zay's jaw clenched. Margot looked at him, eyes wet. "You don't have to believe me, but please, take the test. Let's be sure." He stared at her for a long time. Then he said, "If I do this and it's not true, will you leave me alone?" Margot nodded. "Yes." Zay exhaled. "Okay then, let's do it." The DNA kit arrived by courier 2 days later. It was placed on the coffee table in Margot's living room like an artifact. Small, white, harmless looking. And yet, it held the weight of everything. 2 decades of grief, a lifetime of silence, a boy who had become a man without knowing the story that should have shaped him. Zay stared at it without touching it. "You're sure this is real?" he asked. Claudia nodded. "Chain of custody is secure. Results come back in 5 days. Expedited." Margot sat still on the far side of the room, hands clenched in her lap. "I don't remember anything," Zay muttered. "Not a single thing." "You were a baby," Margot said gently. "You're not supposed to." He looked at her, expression unreadable. "And if this comes back, and I'm not him, then you'll walk away," she said, "and I'll thank you for your time." He nodded once, tight, then finally picked up the swab. The waiting was unbearable. Margot didn't sleep. She paced. She brewed coffee and forgot it. She walked the garden in loops. 5 days stretched like a year. The night before the results were due, she pulled out Elias's yellow blanket and pressed it to her face. It no longer smelled like baby powder or summer skin, but the memory was enough. Claudia checked in daily. Zay sent no messages. Margot didn't. Expect him to. On the morning of the 6th day, Claudia called. It came. Margot couldn't speak. "It's him, Margot. 99.9% parental match. Zay Monroe is Elias Reynolds." The floor didn't fall out from beneath her. Instead, it was like breath, real breath, entered her lungs for the first time in years. She cried without sound, not from pain, from the shock, Of the truth finally arriving, Claudia added softly, "He's at the gallery, waiting." The meeting space was the same. No cameras this time. Just Zay, sitting in the center of the room, his guitar resting in its case by his feet. When Margot entered, he stood but didn't speak. She took a few steps forward. "It's true, isn't it?" he asked. She nodded. He ran a hand over his face. "I don't know how to feel." "You don't have to feel anything yet," she whispered. He looked down. "It's like everything I know is paper thin, like I could poke a hole in it and fall through." Margot wanted to hold him, but didn't move. He said, "He told me she died giving birth. Renee said she was 17, that there was no one else. I never questioned it." Margot's voice was steady. "He told you what he needed you to believe. I loved him. I know. I still do," he added bitterly. "But now I don't know what that means." Margot finally stepped closer. "It's okay. You can love him and still hate what he did. Both things can live in you at once." Zay blinked at her. "And you." "I loved you," she said. "Every second, even when I didn't know where you were." "That love didn't vanish?" Zay exhaled. "I don't know how to be your son." "You don't have to try. You already are." Walter Gaines was arrested 2 days later. Claudia had used the DNA confirmation and her old contacts to push the DA's office. Once it became clear that Walter had no legal guardianship, no adoption record, and had forged a death certificate. For Renee Holloway, they had enough. The police arrived just before sunset. Walter didn't run. He opened the door with a slow creak, saw the uniforms, and simply nodded. Inside, they found a drawer full of altered documents, fake identities, and a notebook with names of other placements from his days running small music camps. At the Bay station, Claudia watched him through the one-way glass. He sat still, hands folded, not answering questions. Zay didn't come to the station. He stood outside, watching from across the lot. When they led Walter out in cuffs, their eyes met. Walter didn't shout, didn't protest, just looked at Zay like a father seeing his son walk away. Zay didn't wave. He didn't flinch. He just stood still. The news broke the next morning. Missing infant identified 20 years later through DNA test. Abductor arrested. Savannah exploded with it. Reporters camped outside Margot's house. Old neighbors knocked on her door. Strangers left flowers. On the porch, she didn't answer any questions. Neither did Zay. Instead, they sat together in the living room, the magazine on the table between them. The one that started it all. Margot picked it up, turned to the photo. "You look so much like him," she said. "Who?" "Your father." Zay stared at the image. "He died?" Margot nodded. "In 2015, cancer." Zay rubbed his jaw. "And what was I like as a baby?" "You were stubborn," she said, smiling softly. "You hated naps, loved music. You had this weird obsession with spoons, wouldn't let go of one unless I gave you another." Zay chuckled. "That sounds like me." "I used to sing to you." "Every night," she said. "What song?" She hesitated, then hummed a soft tune. "Old. Simple. A lullaby." Zay closed his eyes. "I think I remember that," he said quietly. Margot's throat tightened. "I used to call you Eli," he smiled faintly. "That feels right." Later that night, Zay sat on the porch with his guitar. Margot listened from the kitchen. The melody was familiar, half lullaby, half something new. He sang softly about time lost, about names forgotten, about a woman who wore yellow and stood in the rain with her arms open. When the song ended, he looked toward the screen door. "I think I want to try," he said. "Try what?" "Being Elias." The first week after the truth settled in was quiet. Zay, now Elias again, at least on paper, stayed at a short-term rental a few blocks from Margot's house. He needed space. She understood. They met for breakfast a few times, shared coffee, talked about the weather, about books, music, nothing heavy. It was like learning to speak with someone who had your same mouth, but none of your memories. One afternoon, Margot brought out a photo album. She placed it on the table between them. and let the silence stretch. Elias flipped through the pages. Slowly, photos of a nursery, a baby wrapped in yellow, his gummy smile, a shot of Margot asleep with him on her chest. One image made him stop, a park bench. His chubby hands, holding a small spoon, his face scrunched like he was mid-laugh or mid-sneeze. "I think I remember this," he whispered. Margot looked up, startled. "Really?" Elias touched the edge of the photo. "I don't know, maybe not the moment, but the color of the bench, the way the light falls, it feels like a dream I've had." Margot blinked away tears. "I used to sing to you there." "What?" "Song?" She sang it again, this time all the way through. Her voice cracked midway, but Elias didn't look away. When she finished, he whispered, "I used to hum that without knowing why." He didn't return to Atlanta right away. Instead, Elias stayed in Savannah. He started helping around the museum, volunteered in the music archives, played guitar on weekends in a nearby cafe. Quiet sets, soft lights, nothing flashy. Word got out, people whispered. Some came just to see him, the boy from the news, the miracle. But for Margot, it was never about the headlines. It was about the sneakers by the front door, the coffee mug left on the kitchen counter, the way he'd hum while folding laundry like he always had, and the photo on her fridge no longer. Felt like a tombstone. It felt like a bridge. One day, Elias brought over a box. "This was in Walter's attic," he said. "I didn't want to open it alone." They sat together on the floor of her living room and lifted the lid. Inside were photos, dozens of them. Renee holding him at different ages, a beach trip, a Christmas tree, a faded ticket stub from a county fair. There were letters, too, unsent, written by Renee, to the boy I love more than breath. "If I could do it all again, I'd choose you, but I'd do it right." Margot read them slowly, her hands trembling. "I hated her," she whispered, "for so long. But now—" "She was a kid," Elias said, "lost, scared. She still took you. She also kept me alive." Margot looked at him. "And now?" "Now I want to live forward." Claudia came by one last time. She stood on the porch with a small wrapped box in hand. "This is for you," she said, handing it to Elias. He opened it. Inside was a thumb drive. "Everything we have on your case," Claudia said. "All the files, reports, newspaper clippings, in case you ever want to see the road that led back to you." He nodded. "Thank you." Claudia looked at Margot. "You got him back." Margot didn't speak. She only smiled, eyes full. The nursery hadn't changed in 20 years. The walls were still pale blue. The mural of stars and moons still faded, but intact. The rocking chair in the corner creaked softly as Elias pushed it once with his hand. "You never changed it," he said. "I couldn't." He walked to the small dresser, touched the wooden bear still perched on top. "It feels like stepping into a memory that was never mine." Margot joined him. Maybe it was paused, waiting. He turned to her. "I don't know how to be a son." "You don't have to," she said. "You just have to be." He nodded, eyes glistening. "Then, maybe, we can start here." They took it slow. No forced dinners, no catch-up marathons. Some nights he stayed at her house. Others he retreated to his own space. He started using the name Elias on new paperwork, still answered to Zay in public. He wasn't ready to let go of the boy he'd been, but was beginning to welcome the man he was becoming. And Margot? She planted sunflowers in the backyard. She took down the flyers from the drawer by the front door. She removed the lock from the nursery door. And one night, Elias handed her something new, a song. It was called Found. The lyrics were simple. But in them were all the years neither of them could explain. She listened with her eyes closed. When it ended, he asked, "Too much?" She shook her head. "It's perfect." Months passed. The media moved on. Another story, another scandal. But the city remembered. People still stopped Margot at the market, still whispered at church, but she no longer carried the weight of grief, only memory, and memory was lighter. One spring afternoon, Elias stood on a local stage during a community arts festival. It wasn't a big event, just folding chairs and string lights. But the crowd was warm, familiar. Before he began, he looked at Margot seated near the front. "This next song is for someone I once lost, but who never stopped looking." He sang with the softness of someone who had once been broken, but now wasn't. That night they sat on the porch together. Margot handed him a photo, the original, Elias in yellow, 7 months old. He looked at it for a long time, then said, "Do you still have the blanket?" She nodded. He smiled. "Maybe keep it for someday." Margot looked at him. "Someday?" "I don't know," he said, eyes twinkling. "I think I want to be a father who knows where he came from." She leaned her head on his shoulder. The porch light flickered. The street was quiet. They didn't need to say anything else. The past doesn't disappear. It doesn't burn clean or fade quietly. It waits, in songs, in dreams, in birthmarks shaped like flames. And sometimes, if you're lucky enough, the past doesn't come back to haunt you. It comes back to hold your hand.